Okay, guys, thanks for joining the business application track. I hope you have had a good coffee break. We have packed a great agenda for the next couple of hours. We'll have presenters for Roche, Institution of Engineering and Technology, Perfect Memory, and Ontotext. Each session will have a duration of 30 minutes, 20 minutes for a presentation, and 10 minutes for Q&A. Because it's important for us to hear your voice, share your feedback, so don't hesitate to do that in the Q&A panel. We'll try to address your questions at the end of each of the talks. The first talk is by Ontotext, so I have the honor to be accompanied by my colleague Todor Primov, who is leading our Life Sciences and Healthcare Solutions unit here at Ontotext. So we'll be sharing our experience on applying LinkedLifeData inventory as an enabler for fast creation of knowledge graphs. For the sake of not switching through users, Todor will be operating the slides. Thank you, Todor. So let me give you an overview of the talk and what we are going to share with you. First, I will do a very quick intro of Ontotext. Then we will share more about our life sciences and healthcare capabilities and most common use cases. Then Todor will start describing the knowledge graph building methodology that we have come up here at Ontotext. Of course, a central part of the talk will be dedicated to the LinkedLifeData inventory. And last but not least, we will share some relevant experience building knowledge graph applications, leveraging our LinkedLifeData inventory. And as I said before, we will leave enough time for Q&A. Okay, with that, I think we're good to go. Thank you, Todor. Okay, so very briefly, what do we do here at Ontotext? We help big enterprises and institutions to make the most of their structured and unstructured data by putting their data in context, interlinking it data, and leveraging semantic metadata. By doing so, we enable business users to get profound insights and actually to get actionable insights from their data, which could be of various nature. It could be diverse data, siloed data. It could be data siloed in document stores. It could be any type of content. Of course, by doing so, we are leveraging our customers' proprietary data, but we also enrich the knowledge graphs that we create using various types of external data sources, mainly public ones, but also commercial data sources. So why there is such a huge hype around knowledge graph, especially in healthcare and pharma? Let me give you my perspective of that. The first and most important thing is that knowledge graphs provide a totally new perspective on top of how you can manage and consume your data. So from actually starting to do a transition from being a classical company that consumes data locked in different data stores, no matter structured or unstructured, to actually start navigating through your data driven by your business needs and your use cases. Because knowledge graphs can provide linkage between the concepts, and this can actually enable fast data consumptions, and this can improve the data literacy across the organization. As you can see here in this diagram, depending on the use case, you can navigate through the knowledge graph in multiple ways. If you're in drug safety, you can, for instance, start by tracking the different relationships between a treatment and a specific drug, as well as maybe checking some reported adverse events. If you are in drug R&D, you may want to check the specific proteins that are targeted by a specific drug, or even go on a lower granular level and checking, for instance, molecular interactions data, gene expression data, you name it. So as you can see, knowledge graphs could be used in multiple ways. Knowledge graphs could be used as a typical graph database that you could query against. Knowledge graphs could be used as graphs that you can run various network analytics on top. And of course, you can use knowledge graphs as reference databases on which you can generate new facts on the top of the data that you already ingested. Since life sciences and healthcare are quite central for Ontotext, We believe that thanks to those pillars here, we have a really advantageous position on the market. Of course, starting with a very solid technical base, we have GraphDB as one of the most widely used semantic graph databases for building enterprise knowledge graphs in the pharma and healthcare. We also have Ontotext platform that offers flexible ways for you to leverage, actually, to enrich your knowledge graphs via text analytics and to consume data via different analytical applications. Last but not least, here at Ontotext, we have grown a team of subject matter experts in the domain that can speak, the language of our customers, can have a very deep understanding of the problems that they need to solve, and in this way, they can actually help a lot. We also invested in having a local presence. We recently opened an office in Basel so that we can still stay closer to our customers and our partners, because Basel is one of the global biotech and medtech centers. Of course, we have invested in developing a very big inventory, mostly of public data sources, reference terminologies, and ontologies. That is actually the central part of this topic. And of course, we have invested in developing strong partnerships with leading companies, tooling providers, system integrators, global consultant, technical vendors. So to give you the context about how we actually leverage this LinkedLifeData inventory, this is a really very high-level overview of the different components that we use. Of course, we have this solid technology layer that I already addressed, centered around GraphDB and the Ontotext platform. But data is actually really important because very often data is either missing or the available proprietary data is not well connected, is only just a simple reference vocabulary or terminology, and needs to have a lot more richer structure. So for this, we are actually using this LinkedLifeData repository, which is split in different topics, different themes. It covers a variety of areas, like we have medical ontologies, we have medical guidelines, we have biomedical documents, drugs and compounds, research literature, you name it. So whenever you need for your specific use case, we have it in our repository and we can use it to enrich your proprietary data so that we can address in a very detailed way the specific business needs of the use cases that you want to cover. And thanks to this combination between the technology tooling, different technology services, and the data inventory, we actually deliver purpose-built business solutions like the one that you see on the screen. Those are just examples, and I will use the next slide just to give you a glimpse on actually how we are positioned on the pharma value chain. Since pharma, it's maybe the biggest adopter, the most active adopter from those verticals that we cover. As you can see, we are pretty widely placed among the pharma value chain. So we have worked in different use cases, starting very early on with research and development, with use cases like therapeutic target discovery, drug repurposing, or omics data management. When it comes to preclinical development, we have customers that use GraphDB and our LinkedLifeData inventory to build either on their own or with our help knowledge graph-powered applications for hypothesis testing or for preclinical drug discovery. We have also experience in drug manufacturing, working on various use cases that are around regulatory compliance or technology transfer. Of course, we're very strong traditionally in clinical because of this combination of knowledge graphs and natural language processing. As you know, especially in the clinical phases, the volume of documents is really vast. So we help companies to actually find what they're looking for in this huge volume of documents, very often very big and heavy in terms of structure, in volume, and in number. So we have experience with use cases like drug safety, scientific communication, regulatory intelligence. When it comes to marketing and distribution and market access, we have worked on use cases for key opinion leader nurturing, as well as medical inquiries, analytics, and product labeling and updates. With that, I will hand over to Todor that will lead you through the technicalities of actually how do we do it, how do we leverage the LinkedLifeData inventory, and of course, he will be sharing some relevant use cases. Over to you, Todor.
Thank you, Ilian. So the methodology that you can see summarized on this slide actually is based on our experience derived from the delivery of multiple projects in various domains. So it's not a specific methodology developed only for the life sciences domain. We pretend this to be a universal ontology that you can apply when you implement your knowledge graph. And thus you can suspect actually the most important step is the first one, to compile the list of competency questions, because this will define the scope of your entire knowledge graph, and putting you in the shoes of different personas will actually provide you with different views over one and the same questions. For example, you can define a general competency question. I would like to know which are the key opinion leaders in a specific research medical domain. But this, in the eye of a clinical researcher, could be completely different from the needs of a clinical trial project manager, for example. They can have completely different needs. And defining really a comprehensive list of the questions that you would like to address with your knowledge graph will help you to understand the domain and what you are aiming to achieve. You define at the end the scope, and which will actually determine which are the relevant data sets that you can use to solve these problems. And once you have the broader list of candidate data sets, you can go into a deeper analysis of what is the actual content that they will bring in. What are the number of records available, how comprehensive is the data set, what are the available identifiers that you can use to interlink it with other data sources, what is the relevance, which data set will provide you which piece of data that will solve a specific question that you have in mind. And going deeper and deeper, you are going to identify the precise schema, you are going to disambiguate or further define the field meaning, and you're going to understand the actual knowledge encrypted in these data sets. Of course, we're to some extent working in the life sciences and healthcare, because most of the data sets are pretty good in terms of quality. So there is no significant need for data cleaning and normalization, but still there is such need. And I'll give you really a couple of examples, especially for the normalization. In most of the cases there, even for the data sets that are delivered in RDF, there are still some mismatched identifiers, mismatched URIs that refer with, for example, wrong namespaces that you need to fix in order to, when you load your data in the knowledge graph, they can automatically resolve. Data enrichment is really very powerful tool, because actually what you aim to achieve at the end is to have a high quality knowledge graph with a very high level of normalization, so that you can have disambiguation between the terms, no information locked in textual field, for example. And here in the data enrichment, we efficiently integrate our NLP pipelines, which are usually populated with some of the key referential data set, ontologies, terminologies, different type of vocabularies in the specific domain. And we use these resources in order to identify objects mentioned in the text. In terms of complexities, this can range from really simple name entity recognition or converting strings to things, but it could also result into a high in complexity type of relation extraction from small snippets from some of the more metadata rich data sets. And once you have really a great variety of data, in some cases overlapping between data sets, you need to harmonize the data on a higher level. And for those data sets that you need to be transformed into their native formats, let's say XML, RDF, you need also to have the data conversion scripts in place. And it's a common problem that you have might have an overlapping data sets in which, for example, different sources can provide one identical entities that you would like to deduplicate and to match them semantically. For example, NCBI genes and Ensemble both can provide you with information about gene and genomics data, and in order to really not duplicate the data already present in both data sets, you would like to semantically match the different instances across these data sets and to provide a unified representation of this information and limit the redundancy of the data. And of course, very important step, which will limit the resources required to maintain your database, your knowledge graph, up-to-date live knowledge graph, is to create a data update procedure to automate the process. Actually, this includes all the steps from 4 to 7, and this ensures not only the automation of these steps, but also the process that will at the end generate the required artifacts. I mean, these are metadata describing the dataset itself, also to introduce some data quality checks and validation, because as you know, the schema of the datasets evolve and there could be changes, and you need to ensure that each new release of a dataset is consistent with the defined model in advance. And you can query the knowledge graph that you have created in many different ways, starting with really basic Sparkle queries, seeing that actual Sparkle query can answer one of your competency questions that you have defined in the beginning. And going further, you can develop very complex semantic search on top of it, and even start with more deeper analytics on top of the data through dashboards or other algorithms. As Ilian already mentioned, we maintain more than 200 public dataset ontologies in the life sciences and healthcare. They span from various domains, starting from genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, pathways and interactions, clinical, medical, and various types of scientific publications. An important category of those data sets are actually the referential ontologies and terminologies that we use. Some of those are actually distributed already in RDF format, like SNOMED-CT. However, others, like for example MEDRA and ICD-9, 10, and many other medical terminologies, are not yet available in RDF and not maintained by the publishers in such a format. So for that purpose, we keep our model, our transformation of those ontologies into an RDF. And why this is important? Because actually we use all these ontologies to semantically normalize the data for all other metadata-rich data sets, like, for example, pathway commons, FDA, National Drug Code, drug set FDA, and any other data sets that you see listed here in the slides. Well, what we mentioned is that based on our methodology, we aim to define an automated process that keeps the normal flow of the data from the primary sources to your knowledge graph intact and fresh, meaning that all the new data releases of your data sets needs to be automatically updated, improved in terms of quality, meaning semantic normalization, enrichment, and validated that they comply with the previously defined schema that you have for this particular data set. And at the end, to generate the necessary metadata so that this particular data set and all the rest to be easily findable, accessible, interoperable, and could be easily reused in other projects. Or in other words, providing the source data required for a semantic data catalog that can be used by your customers, your users, to identify which are the relevant data sets containing specific category of information to which other data set this data set is naturally connected, what are the type of the relationship, the semantics, and how many relations there are available in this particular release. So we can deliver the LinkedLifeData inventory in different models, starting with data as a service, just subscribing to receive the latest updates, which are generated by the data update workflows, going to completely manage knowledge graph as a service type of an offering in which we can develop, manage, and maintain your proprietary and knowledge graph, and then we can adapt based on your particular needs to a custom model that satisfy your particular needs. I will refer to two very different in scale but very identical in scope projects, starting with the one developed recently for Roche for building a preclinical discovery knowledge graph. So the objective was really to build a multimodal knowledge graph, providing the capability to ask complex queries across different data sets and to bring insights to the end users. So we used primarily public data sets that you can see on the screen. At the end, the result was really a knowledge graph of more than 1,300,000,000 facts, with around 40% of inferred new information. For that delivery of this particular project, we have used our methodology and automated processes, which actually resulted in a very short delivery time compared to if you are doing the knowledge graph implementation from scratch and not relying on already available artifacts. So with the current system, it's quite easy to really define a very complex queries scattered across different data sets that we have integrated, and to get an insight from the developed dashboards and data exploration UI functionalities, which we have built together with our partners for MetaFacts. The other project is still the same scope, building a knowledge graph out of public data sources. However, it was a very strict scope for identification of new treatments for a specific disease. And again, this is not a big pharma company like Roche. This is a startup company in the in silico drug discovery domain. Still, we use the same methodology, applied, however, on a larger data set collection, more than 20 data sets. And in here, the difference is also that we augmented the public knowledge with intensive text analysis from public data sources, public collections like PubMed, augmenting, enriching the knowledge graph with more information, facts that are not already presented in the structured data sources. Going back to Ilian.
Thank you, Todor. I will finish very quickly with this slide because we have interesting questions that I would like to address as much as possible. Yeah, just to wrap up, the Ontotext differentiators, as you can see here on this slide, are pretty obvious. So basically, the very solid technology portfolio, one of the actively used semantic graph databases, the most scalable one in the pharma and healthcare, from allowing us to build even more richer knowledge graphs via text analytics and also consume data via various data analytical pipelines. As you already see, we have a lot of vertical data offerings, and for this purpose, we built this LinkedLifeData inventory to both help our teams but also our customers to develop knowledge graphs in a matter of weeks. And of course, we're fully W3C standard compliant, which is really not only for us but for our customers and partners, because this ensures smooth transaction between data, and of course, unmatched experience across disciplines and verticals. But I would rather skip the last bullets and focus on the questions. So Todor, maybe the first one is for you because it sounds a bit more technical. If I don't have the needs to change the knowledge graph that you created for me, would all processes around data sources updates be automatic without any involvement on my end? So basically, this is a pretty good question when it comes to the involvement on the side of the customer. If we build a knowledge graph and then there is no need.
Yeah, even for both models, data as a service and knowledge graph as a service, for the latter second one, it's clear that there will be no involvement from the customer side. But for if you are just subscribing for a data as a service type of an offering, yes, in this case, we're going to release each new version of a single data set with all the necessary artifacts, meaning the actual data as an RDF, normalized, interlinked with other data sets. In addition, there will be additional mappings to external data sets that you have in your collection, in your subscription, that will automatically interlink your instances from any of your data sets to all other data sets in your knowledge graph. And if necessary, there will be also some automatic NLP pipelines applied on specific sections or specific properties of your data sets. It's based on some details on the subscription which to be applied. And this will, each data set will be released with all these artifacts, in addition with detailed DCAT description and void description of the precise data that is available in this dataset release version. So you just loaded it in your knowledge graph, and once you load all the subscribed datasets, they will automatically resolve and interlink.
Thank you, Todor. A question around the Roche preclinical discovery use case that you shared. What time did it take to build this knowledge graph for Roche? Was it really intensive?
The actual knowledge graph development effort was within a 2-week time period. However, we also then afterwards we work with our colleagues from Metafax in order to support the development of the dashboards, the interactive part, the analytics, visualizations, and data exploration sitting on top of the knowledge graph.
Thank you. I'll take the next question that was shared in the chat. How far you have come along with introducing knowledge graphs to either the healthcare research or clinical practice? We already shared 2 relevant use cases. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to share more, but actually, Sam, I will follow up with you to share more relevant use cases, both when it comes to healthcare research and clinical practice, because I would really like to have one more question because we
maybe I can also jump very briefly for this one. We are also very successful in research projects. We are currently in an EXAMO project, which is for histopathology, building a histopathology multimodal knowledge graph, combining both data extracted from clinical synopsis records, but also augmenting, using this information also together with information extracted from medical images, just for to support the better diagnostics of cancer conditions. So we have also quite interesting projects.
Thanks. And maybe the last question, what obstacles are there in implementing knowledge graphs in the drug development process, if any? Obstacles could be various, from lack of high quality curated data, to
Actually, getting access to the customer data, especially in the pharma and healthcare, is quite a challenge, especially in the medical domain, because we are speaking of sensitive data that needs to be anonymized. This is, I will identify, speaking from based on experience with previous projects with other pharma companies, really to get access to clinical documents, for example, which are quite sensitive, takes too much time because there are already established governance procedures that cannot be avoided.
Thank you, Todor. I think we're right on time. I suggest that we move to the next session so that we can keep the agenda as is already announced. Thank you all. We will try to address all questions that we were unable to answer through the platform. So bear with us, and don't hesitate to visit our booth and ask again for a face-to-face meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.